Good afternoon. My name is Tom. I come to you from northern Maine, here at the Rustic log cabin. We're creeping up on deer season now, so if any of you've watched any of my channel, you see that that's what's kind of been on my agenda now for several weeks. This right here is another field that I hunted for about 18 years, give or take. I was younger back then and didn't pay attention to time as much as I do now. But anyways, I was talking about this field in my last video. So this is going to be, some of the points in this video are going to be what I made in the last one. But they go hand in hand. And I wanted to bring this one out, because this is all field with trees all the way around it. And right here, this is a river that I canoed up with my canoe. It's roughly about a 2-mile canoe ride. But the distance between this river and this field was about 300 yards. No more than that. And it might have even been a little bit less between this riverbank and this field. And why is that important? It's important because this was my tree stand. I placed my tree stand halfway between the river and the field. And that way, the deer could not pass my tree stand without me seeing them if they were on this side of the river. Right here, I had 150 yards this way, and I had 150 yards this way. And that's what today's video is going to be about. It's going to be how I utilized this field, this river, and took most of my deer from this particular tree stand, year after year after year. So here's another one of those fields that usually has got a hunter in it, but not every night. This field sets back off the road. It's one of those back fields that you see on farmers. They have their front fields and their back fields. And I find these back fields are the one that will have the most deer in it. Now, I used to come here in September. I could come in this way with my old Jeep. I had a 1957 Willys Jeep. That was back before four-wheelers. Nobody had four-wheelers back then when I was hunting this field. So I had a road I had put in for the Willys Jeep that would park me up here in the corner. And this red square is where I would sit with some binoculars and I would watch this field every night, the month of September, and a lot of nights in October, probably as many nights in October as I did in September. If I wasn't working, I was in the Jeep, I was sitting in this field, and I was watching the deer come out to this field. And then there was 6 runs that came out in this field. What I did was I labeled them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. But I was set up here with a pad of paper, and I would record the deer that came out. As they came out, I wrote down the time. And you could basically set your watch by those deer. They might have been off by a minute, maybe 2 minutes, but it was close enough that every night you could say, on this particular run, they're going to be out in another 2 minutes. And they would be out. They were the does. The does always come in first. But we had the same scenario as what I talked about in my last video. In November, now I never sat in the field in November, ever. Like I said in the earlier video, there's always another hunter that has claimed that field. Now, like I said, I hunted this area for close to 18 years. There was always a hunter right here where this makes a bend, and he was watching this corner, and he was able to watch this corner. It was probably about 700 yards between here and down to here, and then 1,000 yards this way. And there was usually, most of the time, there was a hunter over here where I did my September and October scouting. But there was never anybody down in this piece of woods here, ever. Because the road was up here, the farmer's farm was right here, and the road was right, well, there was another field between here and there, but you get the point. So what they would do is they would park in the farmer's little road here, and they would walk in, and this is where they primarily hunted. If they didn't hunt up in this corner, then they would hunt over in this corner. But they never knew that I was down here, because I came in by canoe, like I said earlier. And if you see right here, this is the bedding area over here. This is the feeding area. During scouting, I kept noticing these runs that would cross the river. This river was dead calm, no rapids, no nothing. It was just a swamp river, really a stream. And but what I noticed was in this area before I put the tree stand in, is that there was 5 or 6 runs that crossed right here. So I said, holy smoke, and the common denominator was they all met on this field run that you heard me talk about in the last video. All of these runs came up and met on this run that followed the whole length of the field. So when I placed my tree stand right there, this is the best tree stand I have ever had in my career of being a deer hunter. I had 6 deer runs that met at that tree stand, and they would cross somewhere on either side of me to get to this field to feed. And that's how I shot my bucks. Many, many, many of them. So these guys here, back up in here, like I said earlier, they thought they had the best seat. Now, in the last video, I talked about taking a buck out of this field. And I told you I would elaborate on it more here. I only shot in 18 years. See, I could see the field from here, but I really didn't have a good shot because there was a lot of trees between me and the field. And I couldn't see down here anyways. I could see straight up. But over in here is a low spot. It's a big bowl in the land, and it was low, and the sun, this is the south here. So the sun would come in here and would beat down in this bowl. This field dropped right off into a bowl. And it wasn't very big, but that's what it takes to hide a buck. And it wasn't very big at all. And that's where this buck was bedded in here, and he come out to right in the center of the field was a high spot. He was standing there. He looked like that great big insurance buck that you see on the commercial. He had a massive rack, and he was just standing there. Well, down here was a bunch of does. There was at least 6 does right here is what he was paying attention to. I'm sitting in my tree stand, and I'm watching these runs right here. My tree stand was set up that I was facing this way. The field was to my back. And I looked over my shoulder, and the reason of that is because all these runs. There's 7 runs here that meet. I've seen bucks come down here. I've seen bucks come across. And I've used all the deer I shot was on this side of the tree stand as they were coming around. But I look over my shoulder, and there's an 8-point buck, over 200 pounds, standing in the middle of that field, and I don't have a shot at him. I climbed down out of my tree stand. This is a little over 100 yards between here and there is fence post going down the field. This is about 200 yards plus to where the deer is. I climb out of the tree stand, I get to the fence, I look down, I see the does, I see the buck, I see the whole picture now. I lay my rifle across the top of that fence post so I had a good sturdy rest, and that's how I took that buck. One shot, right to the heart area. He ran down the field, give or take 200 yards or so, and that's where he piled up, right in the middle of the field. It doesn't get much better than that for me. But anyways, then I had to, and it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I love shooting a deer at 4 o'clock in the afternoon because that gives me a couple of hours before dark to get him out. Most of the time when I'm taking deer out, it's well after dark. Every single time I shoot them, I got them, and then when you hunt by yourself, it's a lot of work to drag a deer out, and especially when you have canoed in for 2 miles to get there. So I shot him there. I didn't gut him in the field for a couple of reasons. One, it's the farmer's field. I don't want to mess it up on him. He comes down there and finds a big mess. And I don't want other hunters to see a gut pile, because that's the quickest way to give away your hunting spot that there is. Leave a gut pile around. That's like having here's a big sign. I shot a deer here. You might as well give your spot up. So anyways, I dragged the deer back to where my tree stand was and got it in there. Actually, I dragged past the tree stand down to the river, and that's where I got it and was in the river. And then the gut pile I threw into the river and let that float away. Like I said, I don't give up my spots that easy. Other people might. I'm not that way. I worked hard to find this spot. I was not about to give it up. I had people in my town that wanted to find out where I hunted. It was so bad that I put out decoy tree stands. They were tree stands that was left for the other hunters to find, so they wouldn't find this one. And they would come up to me in town and tell me, I found your tree stand. I say, oh yeah? And it was always that decoy stand that I left out. I never one day sat in that decoy stand, ever in my life. But it was there for the other hunters, so they wouldn't find this tree stand. So anyways, that's the story behind shooting that big buck. And here again, just like the last video, and if you hunt this way, like I said in the last video, there is always a back door. There's always a back door to getting into these fields. Everybody else will be parking up here by the road. But if you do your preseason scouting and maybe even put in a trail, like I had a nice trail to my tree stand. At most, I only had to walk 150 yards from my canoe to the tree stand. It's quiet. You leave no scent behind. You get up into your tree stand, and you are good to go. But just like in the last video, these guys up here, they think they have the best seat in the field. They know they do. They're the only person hunting there. But what they don't realize, that I'm down here in this back corner, 150 yards from the field, and I have the best seat in the field. And if you find a spot like this and you give up on hunting that field, let them people have that field. That's not the best seat. They don't have the best seat in the house, even though in their mind they have the best seat. You will have the best seat if you find this tree stand right here, and this can be anywhere along the backside of a field. This run is always around fields, always. You'll find the field, and then you will find a deer run 50 to 100 yards inside of the woods. That run is always there. Find that run, and then find out where the most of the other side runs will come into this main run. Look at this run like you would a tote road. A major tote road for hauling out firewood, how they do up here, or when the logging companies. They have a major tote road, and then they got these little tote roads that go back in, they grab the wood, and then they pull it out to the main road. These are all, find them side runs, and then where you find 3, 4, or 5, or 6 of them, that's where you want to put that tree stand. And that could happen anywhere along this field. Like I had other stands up in this corner. I had one over in here. They just wasn't as good as this one, but depending on the weather, or I was hunting this field a lot during bow season. So with bow season, in order to really fine tune in on the deer, sometimes I had to have 2 or 3 spots that I could hunt, depending on how them deer would come out into this field. That's why I was keeping track with a pad of paper, so that I would have a better chance during bow season of cutting one off. So once again, This is another field. Once again, this guy does not have the best seat in town. Now the big question. Why do I think I have the best seat in town? Why is it that this guy doesn't have the best seat? Or this guy over here? Why is it that he doesn't have the best seat? The reason is 9 times out of 10, that buck is going to hang out back here in the woods 100 to 200 yards until dark. He is not going to blunder out into the field like a big fat dummy before dark. It's just not going to happen. So if you're 100 to 200 yards back in the woods, 5 minutes, 10 minutes from the field, you're going to be in a lot better seat than these guys up here. And that's why I believe that if you hunt like this, you will have the best seat in that field. And them guys can have that field year after year after year. I did it in this field for 18 years. 18 years I had the best seat in that field. And it never was in the field. At the end of this video, I'll put you in some links to more topics about the great state of Maine. There'll be 3 of them. I also have a round circle back there. I'm standing next to a bear. Click that bear if you'd like to subscribe to my channel. Looking forward to meeting you, and come along with me to the state of Maine.